Check, check, check. All right, should be grooving. Jess, let me know if you can hear me. Okay, let's get back to what we were doing here. It's a beautiful thing. There is going to be a little bit of a lag, just the nature of OBS. You'll hear me real time, I believe, but the visuals and what you see, I believe, are about 3 seconds back, and so yeah, you may get some inconsistencies between what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Okay, so I'm in the process of creating a costume here for a character that I'm building. I am doing a recreation of an 80s cartoon character. One guy I used to watch, cartoon I used to watch when I was a kid, called Mask. And I'm taking the idea here of this cartoon and kind of updating it for today's standards. And so this is the design here in what the 80s cartoon looked like. This was the lead character, Matt Tracker. He drove a Camaro that would have these gull-wing doors that would open up, and he would be able to fly in that. He also wore this mask called Spectrum that would allow him to do different things. And so I'm essentially taking this kind of design and, again, trying to update it to make it feel a little bit more like something that would have been designed today. And so stage one is to create the suit, and I've already got his build made. And so I'm just kind of playing around with the suit here now. The suit was based off of a Canadian manufactured helicopter pilot costume. I really like the design of this thing, in that it kind of felt very NASCAR, but also let me just close this up here. It felt very NASCAR, but also felt a lot more in line with what I think this guy would actually be wearing. The regions here, the darker regions of this costume, are actually made out of a much thinner and more pliable fabric, and so the costume is designed to be very comfortable with being seated at a helicopter. And so I kind of like the idea of taking something like that and applying it to this. It also happened to have these two-banded colors here that kind of line up very closely with the regions of color that he has, and so applying the color scheme that I've got into this design. Now, one of the things that I did while creating this is I did 2 attempts at making the suit. The first, and this was not something that I needed to do for production. I was a little curious about something. So the first thing that I did in doing this was I created the suit myself. I looked at what the design was. I tried to reverse engineer where each of the panels are on this thing. So looking at where there are seams and how this stuff is stitched together, using that as a means to try and figure out, how this thing would look if it were laid out as pattern. And then I tried to recreate that myself. And so, I went in and created these panels and trying to stitch them together. The next thing that I did is I approached a couple of students of mine, actually not students of mine, students from one of the schools where I work, but they're not in my program. They're in another program. They're in the fashion design program. And what I did was I gave them the same 3 images that I was working from. This one here, which is a medical helicopter pilot. The brown one I showed you a moment ago, which is just the standard, and then a blue one, and this one is just the same costume here from the rear. And so what I did was I gave these to the fashion design students and asked them to reverse engineer the pattern for me, see if they can actually give me something that would be a little bit more true to the actual costume. Yeah, that's one approach, Delta. You can do it that way. It's not absolutely mandatory that you do it that way, but it is one way of doing it. Um, what I received from the fashion design students kind of shocked me a little bit, and I was a little ill prepared for it. They essentially drew everything out on paper and then scanned all the papers. And so what I ended up with from them was um, this hand drawn pattern here, and it kind of made me laugh a little bit because when they told me they had completed, and they said, how would you like it? I said, well, any file format you have, I'll be able to open anything. Like, and even if you don't have the ability to save it as whatever, I'll find some way of converting it. Like, don't worry about that. Just send me whatever file you have. And their response was, file. What do you mean file? And that shocked me. They had drawn this on paper. They had made a 6-foot by 4-foot sheet of paper that had each of these patterns drawn out on it. And so anyway, they started scanning them. They gave me a collection of PDFs, which were each one of the patterns they had drawn, scanned in, and whatnot. I then took to Photoshop, and I started putting them together, trying to get the scale right, so that I can actually line them all up. These are still just their drawings. Originally, I was going to bring this into Illustrator and actually make a vector drawing of it, but I didn't think it was actually necessary. I know, right? And it had never even occurred to me that someone would use paper. But anyway, it ended up working out quite nicely. I ended up with all the patterns here in the world, or in my Photoshop file, and I lined them up so that these center lines here, which indicate the flow of fabric, are all as perpendicular as I could get them, are all perfectly up and down here, allowing me to get all of the pattern into one image, and then I brought that in and then made my pattern from it. Now, there's a couple of things that are of an issue here. First, the students working on the fashion design side of things did not know the measurements of my character, nor did they even know this was going to be used for 3D. They just knew I wanted a pattern recreated. And so they kind of just made up their own scale for how big this human being would be. And it didn't match my character as well. But because of the complexity of the pattern, this here, which you're looking at, essentially is the right sleeve. And because of the complexity of this, it's not an easy thing to rescale properly. It's not an easy thing to get to a point where you can tailor it to this guy quite easily. And so one of the issues that I had is that to scale anything, there's a lot of numbers that got to be bounced around. And so this is that one. I'll open the other one here to give you a look at it. Let me just save this here because I have made a couple of edits to it. So this is the fashion design students created look, and alternatively, this is the one that I made myself. Now, the difference here is that obviously this one, the one that I created by myself, I wasn't actually done this when I received the pattern from the other students, and they ended up being pretty close. There were a few patterns that I did not get the shape of correctly, but the nice thing about this is that you can see this very clearly here, is that I layered things in a way that the students did not. So what you're looking at here, highlighted in yellow, is the shoulder to elbow piece. Yeah, Delta, this one I made without patterns. I kind of looked at the image and tried to base my own pattern off that image. And so here what I've done in layering these things together is now I've got a much easier time scaling things. However, this is not as accurate as the one that the other students made for me, and as such, and again, it wasn't really complete either. And so I ended up not using this one. Once I got the design from the students, I figured I would make that work and just kind of muddle through it as best I could. Let me open that back up again. And so I'll open this guy back up here. This is the one from an actual proper pattern. And so what I did, I recreated their pattern and, essentially traced it out here in Marvelous. And what I'm in the process of doing now is trying to eliminate all non-essential bits of the pattern. So again, the pattern that they drew me was for creating a real-world outfit, a real-world costume. And that isn't actually what I'm making. And so what I need to do is, I need to essentially remove things that aren't needed. So I'm in the process of doing this pocket here. And so the fashion design program kids gave me one that actually does have a pocket, and you can put your hand in it and there's fabric there. But that's not something that's ever going to be a part of this character. This is going to be game related. And so what I plan on doing here is kind of stitching it up and putting an additional piece of fabric in there. So you can see here, this is the outside of the pocket here, right? And it kind of lives right there on the pants, but you can see there's that seam on the other leg where I haven't edited it. And so I've actually removed the inner lining of the pocket. I'll then go and place essentially stitch this one to the rest of the pants. And then I'll be able to place a little triangle area up here that'll make it look like there actually is an interior of this thing without there being one. This will make retopology, and it'll make recreating the costume as a low poly asset a little bit easier. And so that's kind of what I'm in the process of doing right now. You may have noticed I did have this open here a moment ago in Max and in ZBrush, and was playing around with it, but there are just too many things that didn't work out as nicely as I'd have hoped. And so I'm going to go back here to this pattern and try and clean it up a little bit and get to a point where it is going to be a lot more usable. Step one here is to go and finish stitching off this pocket. Which is going to need to go to there, Okay. So this needs to start here and run up, like so. And we should have stitches here now. The other problem that I'm encountering is that this pattern isn't exactly symmetrical because of the flap in the front. That asymmetry is meaning that I've got to do a few things twice. Instead of relying on the symmetry tools to do them for me. But in the long run, I think it'll end up looking a little bit better. All right, so what I'm going to do here is paste. I'm just going to move this guy over until he's in the right area here, and see if I can't find... Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this with the side I haven't cut out yet. Only because then I'll be able to see one-to-one where that shape is. Yeah, sure, Delta. This is Marvelous Designer. It's a Korean-made software that really its only job is to just simulate fabric. It gives you a pretty good starting point to clothing making. And the results are really, really nice, and you can interact with it while it's simulating. But yeah, it's called Marvelous Designer. Okay, so I'm going to start off here. Okay. So I'm going to try something like this. Yeah, this is it. This is how it works. So I'm just going to try and get this inner pattern here. So there's that. And there's the new piece of fabric over here, which I'll go and try and line up. Yeah, it definitely is a nice shortcut, but you do have to be careful. You can very easily make mistakes with this if you're not paying attention, and you do need to know a little bit about fashion design and how clothing is put together in order to do an adequate job of this. Okay, that's going to serve as my inner pocket. I'm just going to move this out of the way here now. And I'm going to do some stitching, some preliminary stitching on the outside panes here. Like so. I haven't decided if I'm going to do any kind of interior in here yet. And then what I need to do is run all the way down the back, which is going to run here. It did not seem to like that. Okay, let's try it like this. Okay, so I'll do the preliminary simulation here, and I can see that there's a little bit of funny business going on here, which means I didn't get that absolutely correct. Yeah, I hear you, Delta. I've got a ton of students that have either done fashion design in the past or are currently interested in it, and I am envious. I keep getting offers from some of the teachers in the fashion design program to show me a few things. There's just the small matter of time getting in the way. Okay, let's see what I can do here. Okay, so we're starting to get something here. We're just getting a little bit of fluctuation. So I'm going to try and delete these edges here. Okay, that's going to kind of serve as the inside of my pocket. The only other thing that I've really got to do is to create myself another inner line. So let's go and see 1.82. And so I'll just measure this out in the right distance. And attach an interior line here. And then all I'll do is just stitch this together. And I'm hoping that the slight amount of overlap here Okay, so I'm getting some funny business going on here. And so all I want to do is just ensure that these things are all sitting at layer 0. Okay. The overlap, when you get one panel kind of fitting on top of another one, is definitely the hardest part of this. Where's the back? So the back here too has got, specifically right here, 2 panels that overlap each other. And I need it to not. So, see if I can select these here. Okay, we'll see how this works. This should have given me a separate panel here. And you can see that that panel is actually inside and buried under the other one. So I should be able to remove it. I'm going to ensure that my stitching is intact. That's not going to work. Okay, that should hold everything together. Okay, I'll just simulate again. Yeah, that'll work. Thanks, Delta. I appreciate it. As to why I don't have more viewers, it's just a matter of people finding the channel. I haven't really been streaming all that long. And so it's just a matter of actually having people find the channel and be able to watch it. Most of my views are actually students of mine that, you know, log in to see me working while I'm not in class. And so even the numbers you see are a little more inflated than when it would than what would appear. Okay, I think that's going to hold up pretty good. Those two areas are kind of solidified. This did do a symmetrical version here on this side, and so I will have to go and stitch that up in the same way. And so I'll do that first here. And I'll stitch this up from the bottom here as well. And then I'll try move that down as well. Okay, another simulate. And we're in good shape. Let's see, the pants are trying to eat themselves here a little bit. So again, this is a layering issue that's going on here, and then I've got too many layers there. I teach video game design and development. Currently, my course loads are Introduction to Modeling, Advanced Modeling, Lighting and Rendering. I teach character modeling at a couple of different schools. That's my forte. I do characters more than anything else. And so, yeah, that's what I do. Okay, let's see what I can do here now with this one. Yeah, it's a living. Okay, take and delete that. And now the other pocket has got the two pockets have now got the same holes here. So I'm just going to ensure again that they're stitched to one another. Something like that. And then I'll need to do the top seam here as well. Like so. And then the side. Like so. All right, I'll do a simulation here, make sure nothing falls apart. Yeah, something has fallen apart. I've lost a little bit of the pocket. Not concerned about that. I can go and fix that again. I should make sure that this pocket here is doing what I want it to, which appears to be the case. Yeah, it's really, really fun software to mess around with. Really, really easy to get something in a very short amount of time looking really good. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to copy and paste an inverted copy of the pocket here, as well as a copy of the seam to which that interior lining is going to be placed. And so I'll just go and snap this here. Make sure it's actually on the outer edge. Okay, something like that. Now just to do some more stitching here. And so we'll stitch that together. And I'll use the free stitching here. Yeah, that's exactly right, Delta. That is 100% what it does. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to stop the simulation here. The pocket's on the far side of the guy here, and so what's going to happen? If I were to simulate this, it's going to, these threads here, these bright colors you see are threading, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to try and pull this panel through his sleeve, through his arm, through his body, through his clothing to get it to the far side. And so I'll just use the translate tools here to move it into the right area, and then I'll simulate and let it get sucked into the right place. Like so. Now, I need to, again, make sure that each of these panels here is set to be layer 0 so that nothing goes funny on me. Which it's already in the process of doing, but we'll try and straighten this out. Yeah, it's all based off what you're used to. You know, there's some people that do completely, you know, hand sculpted stuff, and some people that are far more comfortable doing, you know, clothing simulation in Max or Maya and bringing that in. But yeah, really, there's no one right place. It's just a matter of what you end up with in the end, you know. So I've got something wrong here. First, I stitched my inner pocket here to the wrong place, and as a result, it's kind of shearing. So I'm going to delete this. I forgot to include the red area here. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and stitch this in. And that should rectify some of the little loops that I'm seeing here and hopefully allow this to get back to a normal state. Okay. So I'm just looking at it here, trying to analyze what I've done, because something does not line up. Essentially, what I'm looking at, there should be 2 layers of fabric here. This is, let's switch over to the other look here. Yeah, that's this pocket. So the way this is supposed to work is this guy's supposed to get stitched right here, and the overlap should just be from point to point, point to point. But what I'm actually seeing on the model is that that inner pocket is actually going a little bit beyond. And so I need to double check the stitching here. Something has gone a little sideways on me. Hmm. Okay, I'm going to delete the stitching here and try and do this again. I'm going to do it from another angle and hopefully get a better result here. So we use the free stitching. And I'll start from the center of the outfit out, and then on the bottom layer, center, out. So this one can go and do the entire pocket from there. Okay, so that made the top react correctly. Something's still going sideways down here at the bottom. And I assume it's the same thing. I think I've just made a mistake in how this stuff is stitched together. I'll turn off my simulation. And I'll just delete all the thread. I'll just simulate here. This is going to pop open on the side, like so. I'm just trying to see if I can make sure this is stitched together the right way. Okay. So that does look correct. Okay, so if I stitch this thing, the entire length, to here, and simulate that. That should be the top half, leaving only the bottom. Which I should be able to now just free stitch again, this time to this point. And same thing over here. I should start at pocket and go up. No, see there's overlap there. I'm going to undo that. That point's where I need to stop. Yeah, they absolutely do not. It is a shame that they don't, because it makes it really hard for people to adopt the software and start using it. I don't even know that they've got a full trial version of the software. I've personally purchased it. The schools where I work have purchased the software as well, so the students there have the ability to use it. But in terms of my being able to teach it and whatnot, I just bought myself a version. I've got the annual subscription, which isn't too bad. It only works out. It's like $360 a year, and so that works out to be about $1 a day. And so essentially, I stopped going out for coffee in the morning, and I get free software. That's the way I try to see it. Okay, pockets are good. I think I need to double check that this one is not overlapping here. Okay, so that's working good. I'm going to fix the pockets because I've broken one, and the other is just kind of free hanging here. Hmm. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select the two stitches here, and I'm going to increase the fold strength on them. I'll do this with the simulation on, and I'm going to increase the fold angle. And see if I can get to a point where that sits a little bit more like a proper pocket. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So this is this panel here is a pocket that runs essentially down the side of the leg, and I need to remove it from the leg. And this one's going to be a little bit complex too, because of where that pocket's situated. It's essentially half and half. It's half on one leg and half on one panel and half on the other. Which again is going to end up being a little bit more complex. And so this is the seam here, and I'm just going to cut this. Now all the other fabric here, like I've got all the surrounding tissue kind of thing, and so if I take this off and just stitch everything into its place, actually that might even, the stitching might still be there. Yeah, that's the idea. Delta, I'm going to go try and do the entire workflow with this thing. And so may not be all today, but I am going to try to document as much of the work on this thing as I can. I haven't overlap. Okay, let's simulate this. That's right. Unreal 4 is where this is going. Okay, try that. Overlap sewing line. What are you talking about? There's nothing there. And there's nothing there. Okay, I'm going to have to edit my pattern here a little bit in order to get this to stitch correctly, which I mean probably isn't a bad idea anyway. Okay, it keeps telling me I have sewing overlapping. Okay, let's set this back to 0 here as well. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with Unreal. It is a pretty powerful engine. Okay, I'm just going to shorten the pocket a little bit. Okay, so there's the issue. Yeah, it still is too long. I'll try and get this to be the right size. So I'm not sure. Oh, I think I got to delete the back of the pocket here too. Yeah, I think I'm going to do this. So what's going on here is I'm trying to stitch this thing together, and I've only deleted half of the pocket. So when you look inside here, this panel still exists inside the pocket. And I think that's what's causing the issue. And so I need to go over here and do that same thing that I did a moment ago. And just cut that out. Again, things you would probably never do if you're making real clothing is make a purely decorative pocket on clothing. It doesn't make a lick of sense, but here, you know, on a game character that's not actually going to have any kind of I'm going to try and arrange this a little bit better here too. Yeah, it's kind of confusing when you get into multiple layers, because what happens is the fabric can collide with itself and it can collide with the avatar. And if you're not incredibly careful, you can make things that don't physically make sense, and it'll start getting a little bit bizarre. It is actually meant to be fashion design software, and so it is meant to be able to do all of these things. But it can get a little funky when you start getting into cheating the system a little bit. I mean, if you make everything the way you're supposed to, everything just works fine. It's when you get into these regions of kind of trying to cheat things that everything goes a little bit sideways. And so I'm just trying to arrange the pattern here so that I can see a little bit better here what it is that I'm dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to cut this one off too. I'm going to try and just get one working before I do the other. Okay. Those two belong together. Yeah, it's exactly a delta. With fashion design, they're actually trying to make real clothing. But with games, I'm trying to fake as much as I can. I don't actually need pockets. This guy's never going to store his keys in there. But he is going to need to have, the clothing look like there are pockets. And so I do need to get that kind of sorted in the right way. Okay, so I'm going to go have a look at my stitching here and see if I can figure out where the overlap is coming from. So that guy's there, that guy's there. I'm going to go check and see how long these lines are. 1656 and 12. So I am quite a bit longer in here. I'll try and line this up in a way here that I can see this. I'm just going to make my fabric a little transparent to see through it. There we go. And then this should give me the ability to oh, hello there. I forgot about this. So where I had cut things, my line still exists. Okay, so I should be able to move this into the right place and go into my dots here. Okay. Yeah, in a way. Again, it's 6 of one, a half dozen of the other. So yeah, it's faster to just stamp a pocket in as a normal map. But the end result of what you get, and keep in mind that what you're looking at here is pretty low-res clothing. The idea is that I want to get as much, you bastard, I want to get as much of this to read correctly. There we go. I want to get as much of this to work properly here before starting to sculpt on it. What overlap? There's no overlap. Let's see if there's another line down here. Nope. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. It's not letting me stitch things together in the way that they need to be. I'll do this little downward spout here too. No problem, no problem. I kind of feel like that is the entire point of streaming, you know, is to interact with the people watching you. And so I wouldn't be bothered by the questions. If I was bothered by the questions, I wouldn't be streaming. I've just cut one of my pockets off. Okay, no big deal. It's this here that I can't figure out. Yeah, I did, Jess. In the end, it ended up not really being worth it. There was a lot of things I was trying to get with that costume. A lot of things that I wanted to have done in Marvelous. And in the end, it wasn't really able to do any of them, and I ended up sculpting on top of my simulation in ZBrush a hell of a lot. And so the short answer is yes, I did make it in Marvelous, but the end result of what you see is not from Marvelous at all. Full of excess, you take and take and take. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on here. These guys are returning an error when I try to stitch them, and there really is nothing there. However, every time I try to stitch them together, it gives me the overlapping sewing line, and so I'm gonna have to look this up. No, it still doesn't go into Painter directly. One of the biggest misconceptions, and you can see this with a lot of people that start off with Marvelous Designer, is they want to use just Marvelous Designer. And while it does a really good job of simulating fabric and getting you to a good starting point, it is just that. It is just a starting point. You still need to go in and bring it into ZBrush and sculpt on top of it. It's you got to kind of treat it as your base mesh for the clothing. And kind of work from there. So I'm just looking up an error I'm getting this here on Google because I don't have overlapping seams, and it seems to think there are, and I can't find them. Yeah, no problem, Jess. Yeah, I've just got two pieces of fabric here, and there are no seams on them. The lines are not only within tolerance 12.6 to 12.6, they are exactly the same and it will not let me stitch them together. This to this. Overlapping sewing line. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, you're right, Delta. That might do it. Let's give that a try. So I'll just I'm going to save my garment out here. And we'll exit this and come back in. Okay, we're up and running again here. I'm going to first add my avatar, which is my anatomical guy here that I'm working on. And then we'll go and load up his costume. So open up garment, and the fashion suit here is the one I'm working on. So let's see. If that fixes anything. Nope, overlapping sewing line. So my assumption here is that I've got an internal line on one of these things from the fact that it was cut and detached. Okay, I'm going to try something here. Starting by deleting one. Yeah, why that worked is beyond me. So the solution here was to delete one of the other stitches I'd made and elongate it. Yeah, you can remove them. That's kind of what I just did, but I had to remove it from someplace else and reattach it. Didn't really make a lot of sense. Okay, the next thing I want to do here, I just noticed a discrepancy in size here. So 24/86, and this guy is only 21. So my pocket's a little too short for the area where it is currently stitched. Now this isn't a big deal. These are these numbers here in centimeters here that we're looking at. And so we're looking at 24/86 by 21/35. And so it's not a really big difference. But what that's going to result in is it's still stitches from top to bottom. So what you're going to have happen when you do this is you're going to end up with a bunching that happens on one, and I want to kind of keep that to a minimal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and reproduce this 24/86 here by just moving one of these lines up, and then watching the numbers as I go. So 24, I'll get close, there's 8/4. So I'll just let that go. It's going to do a funny little bunching here on the pants, but I'll resimulate it, and it should drop down. And what this is going to do is it's going to avoid any kind of weird pinching and bulging on this thing. So I can see there's still a little bit of funny pinching going on in the knee here. So I'm just going to double check the length here. 24.86 and 12.60. 12.60 and 24.84. So pretty close. And what I'm going to do now is go into the stitching. And I'm going to move this point, if I can find it. Yeah, this one. There we go. And I'll move this one up as well. Overlap. What do you mean overlap? Oh, what is that? I just found another stitch. Oh, I see you. You bugger. Okay, I got another issue here. I'm going to have to delete this stitch as well. 13.67 and 12. These are a little too far apart. And so I'll try and match these up here too. So I'm just going to take my red fabric. So this is, I guess, an issue that kind of crazy looking. This is, I guess, kind of an issue with doing clothing here based off a real world pattern. Is that there are some areas where this just does not line up, and so I do need to get this to be a lot closer than it is in order to make this thing accurate. That's the wrong one. This one. Turn the other fabric transparent here as well a little bit. Okay, this should. Okay, that's a 1-to-1 fit now. Just move this pocket away. And I should be able to now go in and stitch that just 1-to-1. Bugger, still overlapping seams. Yeah, it looks pretty trendy. I'm not so keen on the butt flap, but it's just my own personal preference, I guess. Okay, now it's telling me everything is overlapping. So let me go and make sure there are no stitches here. Just simulate. I just want to see his knee fall open here. Okay. I'm going to bring the transparency out of here. So for whatever reason, it doesn't like me using the automated stitching. But if I do this free stitching, bugger. No, you're still going to overlap. Yeah, Delta, I'll let you jump on that bandwagon before I do. Okay. What the heck is going on here? So I'm going to delete this thread again here, and let's try doing a free stitching the entire length to the entire length. Whatever. I'm not sure why it wants me to stitch in such ways. But it's working again. Okay, that should sum up one of these. Just debating if I want to really actually have these things as overhangs here. I guess I do. So I think the other thing I'm going to do, I've got some thickness turned onto this thing that I'm just going to reduce down. It should give me a little bit of a better result. Okay, so one side's good. I just got the top of the pocket here to fix. And it should be a fairly straight, simple one. And that should give me a pocket. Now I'm going to select the stitching here. And I'm just going to zero these things out. Or I guess 180 them out. And that's just going to get rid of any folding on the pocket. It should give me a little bit more of a natural look to the pocket. I'm going to move this center point here too. So one of the things that I did, I ended up shortening the pocket. This is why this pocket is being such a pain. Is that in the design I got from the fashion designers, the pocket runs all the way to the center back of the thigh, which didn't make a lot of sense to me, nor is it that way in the pattern. And so I've shortened the pocket here from the right side in, which is why everything kind of looks offset. And so what I'm going to do here is just bring this over to be a middle point in the pocket, which should make it look a little bit better. Like so. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Jess. I'll just tuck that guy in and pull this one out. One little flip in there. Yeah, I think it just works a little bit better. No sense in having a pocket on the back of your leg, especially since this costume is meant to be for a pilot who would be a pilot who sits down, and so there shouldn't really be any reason for there to be a pocket in the back of the thigh. Not yet, but I did get some scary information from the Union Jazz. They are getting everybody's pay sorted out and an email. I think that if it does go through, it's going to be on the 14th. Yeah, everybody seems to say that it is going ahead. In this stupid situation, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, no, it sounds like it's going to be the 14th or the 15th, I think was the last thing I read in the email. We got an email about it. And so, again, nothing's solid yet, right? Like it could go either way. If the schools come back and accept what the union's saying, that like it all goes away. But yeah, who knows, buddy? Okay. So I've just attached the panel here on the other side. This is the one that lives inside the other pocket. So I'm going to do the same thing here I'd done a moment ago. And all these panels here, you'll notice these little blue lines in between them. And so what you're seeing is symmetry. Each of these pockets, or each of these panels here, you'll notice that there's a blue line that runs through to the one on the opposing side. And what that blue line is indicating is symmetry. These things are instances of one another. When I move one, it symmetrically moves the other one, which is a absolutely beautiful setup. Really, really fast and easy to get this thing working. Okay. So, that's not going to work. Oh, I got to do a free stitch here. So we'll free stitch here. And the last thing I'm missing is the pocket top. And that should be it. That pocket should work too. Whoop. Okay, so pocket. Oh. That's very bizarre. The stitching is baggy here on one side. There we go. Yeah, software is definitely acting bizarre. Anyway, there's that. Pockets are all seamed up. Pull this out of his arms here a little bit. I fixed the issue that I had up here. Just a matter of whether I want to do anything with this front here as well. Which I think I do. Again, overlap is kind of kidding me here. And so to avoid it, I just go and delete everywhere where there is overlap. The other thing that I want to do, there's another seam here that exists on this front flap that I want to create. Yeah, it's very, very low res. I am going to res up. I just want to get it to look correct before I do. And I'm actually even in the fast mode of editing here. So this will actually end up looking a lot better than it currently does. I just want to get it like preliminary, a preliminary pass to look good. So the other seam that I want to do is kind of down the front here, which essentially is this line inverted right there. I'm just going to go make sure I've got this in the right place. Okay, so I'll just simulate this again. It's just going to give me another line there, which actually exists in the pattern. Okay, so here's the process now of getting this out of here, and then usable into ZBrush. So I've got my pattern done. I'm liking the way it looks. The only exception I've got here is I haven't fully decided what I'm doing with his gloves yet. So in the original concept, he's got these gloves that go almost to the elbow, or in this one halfway to the elbow. They look like they're different lengths, but it looks like it's most of the way to the elbow. And what I've done is kind of a baggy sleeve on him here. Now I've decided that he's going to use these motorcycle gloves as what he's going to be wearing. And they do, this is going to be the wrist here, and they are going to go up the elbow just a little bit. And right now, I've got nothing here helping that along. So I've got two options. The first is to just make the costume pinch in, right about here. Now, ideally, it would make a lot more sense to do this once the gloves are built. But I think what I'll do is I'll taper the costume, and then I'll just make the gloves to that size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself. This is kind of like what I did down here These little black areas here, these aren't actually meant to be part of his costume. What these things are is they're meant to be just something that's holding the costume in place, so that once his boots are done, his boots are going to kind of come up to that region, and it's going to look like his pants are tucked into his boots. And so that's why I've done that. And I think what I'm going to do is the same thing on his glove here. So I'm going to go find where I just clicked. So it's kind of midway through here. And let's see. I'm trying to debate the best way to do this. Let's try it this way first. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a cuff for him here. He's not a comic book character. He's from a cartoon. His name is Matt Tracker. He's from a cartoon called Mask. Yep, that's right. Yeah, it's an old 80s thing. The benefit of being old is that I get to see all the really good cartoons. You kids just get Pokemon. Okay, so I kind of got these guys in place here. And all I'm going to do is just stitch them to each other. And I'm going to also make sure that this is... that's the wrong one. I'm going to make another material here. I'm going to make this one actually black. Oh, Jazz. Okay, I'm going to have the presets here, and what I want is waistband. Where are you? I don't see waistband. I wonder if they got rid of it. Okay. No big deal. I'll use this one then. So I'm just going to simulate this. Now these two panels here are, because they're smaller than his sleeve, they're going to want to go inside his sleeve. And so I'm going to set them to layer 5. And that's just going to make sure they stay on the outside. Now, I think they got twisted around. I'm going to flip the normal on them here. There we go. Flip normal. I think these things ended up backwards. Yeah. Nope, not that one. Okay, this should hopefully fix itself. Cool, so I'm going to hit undo a couple of times here. Let's see if I can't. There we go. I'm gonna make this a. I'm gonna make this another color. I'm having a hard time seeing the normal versus not the normal. Okay, let's try and freeze these guys. Weird. Yeah, something bizarre is happening with the simulation here. The layers are not behaving. Yeah, very heavy on the GPU. Or, sorry, on the CPU. Not so heavy on the GPU. Heavy on the CPU. I'm just going to try and pull the sleeve down here again. Okay, so that's a fail. Let me fix his sleeve again. Yeah, it's CPU for sure. There's not a lot going on rendering-wise, which is all GPU. I know his arm is in this cuff. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that was a mess. Let's not do that again. Let's see if maybe instead of doing that, I'll try and put some elastic on him. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so this is kind of working. I'm using an elastic band here to bunch it up around his wrist. It's a little strong. The idea is that this should sort of make it look like it's pinched off. The elastics are so strong, it's going all the way down his wrist. Just getting rid of all my beautiful folds in here. Yeah, I've tried to do it for hair. Essentially making a bunch of like sheets of fabric on the top of the head that you let simulate. And it did a pretty good job. The only issue is that you really have to spend a lot of time grooming it, and you got to spend a long time getting to the point where you can attach all the hair. And so there are there are easier ways of doing that. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to try and keep the wrinkles located around the elbow region here. I got this one side working, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to feed rubber bands here all the way down. So what I'll do is I'll do this at 1 centimeter intervals, and we'll make a bunch of these things, like so. If I simulate this, they should all grab his wrist now. Beautiful, and then I'll do the same thing with this one. Like so. And then, lost my pattern, there we go. I'm just going to go move these things back onto the pattern so they don't break. You have stitching or seams like this that go outside your pattern. It can result in funny results. And so I'm just going to go make sure they're all inside the pattern. I do have snap turned on here, but it doesn't seem to want to snap to the pattern the way it's supposed to. Oops. Yeah, that one snapped for sure. What I'll do is bring it back and then back. That works. Okay, so simulate again. We should get a nice tight fitting wrist here now. Which again, that's just the area that I'm going to try and place inside the glove. So I'm going to bring the glove this high. Now again, because of symmetry that is happening to both sides, I just need to, again, make sure that the bunching happens in the elbow and not below. Yeah, that'll work quite nice. I'm going to go and play around with them a little bit here. Now this is the downside of this, is I wish there was an easier way of selecting just the elastic. Okay, there we are there. So I'm going to keep the simulation on, and what I'm going to do is just play with this ratio a little bit. Just to make it a little bit tighter. And then, yeah, that'll start to look like the fabric going inside the glove. And hopefully give me some really nice kind of wrinkles and such in here. Okay, so that was a lot of work, which means save. And I'm going to save this as a garment. Now, the really nice thing about this, too, is that the more often you use the software, the less often you need to use the software. So every time you make an article of clothing, you can keep it in a library and you know, revisit it at any point in time to be able to reuse it again. Okay. So now that it's been saved, now I'm going to, first, I'm going to relay out the pattern here. So I'm going to do this first. I'm going to turn everything off. And the reason I want to lay out the pattern a little bit different is that the pattern that you see here, the sewing pattern, this is your UVs. And so in order to not have to mess around with the UVs too much down the road, I'll go and kind of get to a point where they're a little bit better adjusted here. Let's see. Reposition this. And I want to make sure I don't have any overlap here. Okay. What's this down here? Those are his ankle bits. Okay. I'm not concerned about those. I'm actually going to move those down. I don't need to bring those out. Okay. These things are going to be able to get a little bit closer together. This is the belt loops here. And so I'm just going to bring those off to one side. So there's the right side, and we'll just bring that nice and close. Okay. And this gives me a really nice clean layout for the front. I'm going to leave these guys down here. I'm not going to actually export those. This, I believe, is his belt, which it too is not going to end up being part of the pattern that I'm making here. But I'm gonna need to export it anyway. Okay. Get these guys in place. And then some more belt loops here, which I can just tuck in anywhere. Again, the belt loops are going to end up getting overwritten anyway. I'm going to make something way better than those after the fact. But there we go. Okay, these little circles here are going to be an emblem that I'm going to put on his shoulder. And I had thoughts of making his sleeves asymmetrical and having the logo on one shoulder and then like a pocket on the other. But in the end, I think screw it. I'm going to make them exactly the same. So I'm just going to move these guys down here. They're not going to matter too much. Okay. Bring this over. And this guy too. I'm not sure I'll put the belt. Let's put it above his neck. I think I might put the two sleeves on top of each other. So to do this, I'm just going to bring one up. Select the opposing one. And fit it in down here. Try to get it off that leg piece. The recce radialis and the extensor digitorum flexi radialis, which they go together, right? But yeah, it's a curvy, rounding muscle that, you know, bypasses the elbow. It is definitely a pain. Okay, not ideal, but it'll work for now. I could probably even go and shift some things around here a little bit. Okay. This is good. What's this? That's his cuff. I'm just going to make sure that this is up here. So again, essentially what I'm doing here is UVs. You know, well, this is not a perfect square. I can see if I select holding shift, a perfect square here. So this will give me UVs that somewhat look like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me room for, you know, gloves and boots in the UVs as well. All right, Jess. Nice seeing you, pal. And if I don't see you later tonight, then I'll see you in class. Okay. So now the process of getting this out of here, now that I'm pleased with it, and again, I've done some more modifications here to the pattern, so I'm going to go and save this again over the original one. So the idea here now is to simulate this in a higher resolution. Now I'm pretty sure I'm going to get rid of his cuffs here. I don't actually think I need them. Again, I've got all this rubber band stuff that I've put in here, which should, you know, bypass any need I've got for a cuff anyway. Okay, so stage one, I'm going to go to my avatar, and I'm going to reduce down the offset from his skin. Right now I'm at 3 millimeters. I'm going to bring it down to half that. So I'm going to bring it down to 1 millimeter. And what this is going to do, you can see that it creates artifacts here a little bit. Actually, you know what? This is supposed to be thicker fabric, so I think I will keep it at 3. I'm now going to go manipulate my fabrics here. So this is denim that I've got as this blue material. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to increase its thickness. I'm going to go to about 4 millimeters in thickness. Now what this is going to do is it's going to kind of push the fabric up and away from itself a little bit. But in the end, what that's going to do is it's going to make the fabric simulate thicker, giving me a better end result here. The other fabric, the red one, which I've currently got to cotton and I've got set to 0.5 millimeters, is going to be fine. Again, this is kind of stretchy stuff here that's supposed to exist in the joints to make this thing a little bit more comfortable to wear. This red fabric that I've got, which currently only exists in his ankles and the badge, I've got set to be a fusible rigid. So I want this thing to try and hold a circular shape. It's supposed to be kind of an embroidered patch, so I don't want that to deform too much. Okay, now with that, let's go and now start resing this thing up. So I'm going to select the entirety of my pattern, and what I'm looking at right here is the particle distance. So what this guy is, right here, in millimeters, 20. This is how far, if we were to look at this thing in the wireframe mode, this is how far you're going to get one vertex from the next. They're currently 20 millimeters apart, or 2 centimeters, or about an inch. And so the way that this software works, it's a little backwards from other software in that you're not increasing poly count, you're decreasing distance between the vertices. So you drop it down by half. And what this is going to do is now you'll see I get double the topology. I'm going to go back to my fabric simulation look here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate again. Now, it's going to take longer to simulate, but it will give me smaller, nicer pleats in the fabric. And so we'll just let this go for a second. No, it won't weight the clothing for use on Unreal. This is purely just a visual thing. We're going to bring this fabric into Max, into ZBrush. We're going to sculpt on top of it and turn off my simulation here. And let's take a look at what we're getting. Good. So I'm starting to get nice, thinner pleats here. A little bit too, where it's being pulled under his belt there at the center. I may just decrease the tension on this a little bit here. Okay. Now again, I'm simulating a 10. You can see there's now beginning to end up with some lag here. I'm going to turn off the simulation again. I'm going to select my pattern again. And now I'm going to drop that down again. So from 10, we'll go to 5. Again, we'll let the system catch up. You got to be really, really patient here when you do this. You will notice that I get visual errors while doing this. If you give it a second, it will come back. There we go, popped out. But again, it's just updating the geometry. You just need to be patient. It will come back. Okay, I'm not going to end it. We'll let it come back. There we go. No, I do not have a link to it, but I can tell you what I've got. First off, I'm working on a laptop. This is my work machine, and so I carry it to school and to home with me, and so it's my primary machine. I'm running dual i7 4947s, I believe, 4749s. Whoops. And there we go. I have 2 solid-state 750 gig drives running RAID 0. That is handling the operating system and ZBrush. There's nothing else on those drives. I then have dual 1 terabyte mechanical drives running my data. One of them I call program files, and that's where I've got all my software installed. And then the other one is just my data. I've got 32 gigs of RAM. 4 point, no, not 4 point, 3 point, take a look. 3.7. Come on. What else is in here? Dual GTX 880 at 8 gigs a pop, so 16 gigs of video memory. It's a decent little machine. Yeah, no, precisely. But again, you know, for what I use it for, I needed some pretty high-end specs. Okay, there's another simulation. This is now at 5. And so what we should start getting now is really small pleats in the fabric, or much smaller pleats in the fabric. It's starting to look pretty good. So this guy never did solve himself out here, which is unfortunate. It looks good on one side, but it's still gobbledygook here on the other. Okay, so I gotta go find where that is, and I gotta go reverse engineer my stitching to make sure that I've done this the right way. That one, and that one. So this one, okay. Yeah, the elastic looks better. It's still going to get even one range better as well. And again, this is all going to be inside a glove anyway. I'm going to have a glove that kind of fans out here. But I got to get this stitching sorted out. So right now what I'm experiencing is overlap in the stitching, and there should not be. And so what I'm going to do, no, not that. Come on. Now this would have been something to definitely better to solve this at an earlier stage than now. but we'll see what this does. Just means I'm going to have to be really delicate and really patient here with it, as it is still at a distance of 5 between the points. Come back to me. Yeah, definitely. The software responds way better when you're at a smaller particle distance and a larger one. So I'm going to do a simulation here. I think that was the issue, is that those two things were overlapped, and so I'll give this a whirl and see if it actually is capable of sorting itself out. If not, I'm going to have to increase the particle distance again and go clean it up. Not the end of the world. So as well as doing the character here, I'm also working on his car. I'm taking an old version of a Camaro that I modeled, and I'm updating it. So this is one of the pattern, the blueprints here that I'd used on the original version of the car. There we go. Yep, that's exactly it, Delta. That's the plan. However, because I kind of knew what the problem was, I was able to solve it at this resolution. And so again, I'm going to get nice up and close here and make sure that this is indeed doing what it's supposed to. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to turn off the simulation here. What this is going to do is it's going to give me a more real-time interaction with this guy, so I can move him around and take a look at him from different positions. I keep losing him here. I hit the F button to get him back. Yeah, it's not too bad. I think I'd rather do without the really big, long, droopy wrinkles in the fabric, but I think it'll be okay. And it's going to be based off the pose that my base mesh is in. You can also see that there's a mismatch in the pattern here. So I've got too much fabric in the pocket stitched to a lesser amount of fabric in the back. And that's causing it to get these little ripples in through here. And so if I go look at that area, this area here, so there is the entire length, this and this, which is giving me an entire length of 26 centimeters. And if I go locate that here, I'm at 28 centimeters, so it's actually only 2 centimeters off, but it appears to be enough that it's bunching it up. Now, what I think is going on is more this distance here, 12.21, and if I go and look at where the stitching is, I'm only at 11.48, and so it probably would make a little bit more sense here to go, and I'm going to move this up. The brown one. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. And I'm going to do this one. Yeah, the imperfections are nice. I'm not going to resize any of the pattern. It happens when you actually cut fabric anyway to make an article of clothing. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to try and redistribute it a little bit better so I don't get this big bubble here. That would actually look a little bit better where the pocket is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move these up. I'm going to try and make do with what I have instead of going in and completely realtering it. Otherwise, I'd be here for weeks just fixing one pattern up. All right, so the simulations here are taking longer and longer and longer. Again, one of those things that could be avoided if I paid a little bit more attention to this earlier on. So you can see where this wants to go is up here. I'm actually going to do this as well. So I think this is going to make this way better. We'll have to see. So I think the red material here is also causing some of the issue. Yeah, you can see there's a hell of an overlap here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to place them in the middle. You see there's one point and there's the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the middle. It's going to average out that bubble over both halves, I think, to make it look a little bit better. I'll do this one as well. This one. To about there. Okay, so I'll let this go. I'll simulate it again, and we'll see what we end up with. Okay, simulation time. So I'll see if that area, I'm just going to try to zoom in on it here before I do my simulation. We'll see how much better the fabric gets in this area. Again, there's quite a bit of change in the stitching, so it should drastically alter the way the pattern is. Again, you need the patience of a Buddhist monk while working with this stuff, because it can take a long damn time for it to catch up and simulate and do the things that it's supposed to do. And so, be patient. Don't get ahead of yourself, and don't start clicking like crazy trying to get it to work. Just let it do its thing. So the synchronization is complete. It should be now simulating, and we should see that fabric kind of start to adjust again. Again, I'm not entirely sure how much different this is going to look. It's only just a slight amount of adjustment. Now, the time in between frames of adjustment is drastically different now that I've got this much topology in here. And so the idea is to, really let it go through and do its solving. And then once you see next to no movement, you might not get to the point where it stops moving, but when you get to the point where you see very little movement between the frames, that's where you're going to be assured that it is kind of caught back up again. Now, I'm at 5 in the particle distance here, and that is maybe as small as I'll go. If anything, I'll drop it down to 3. I won't go any lower than that. You end up just completely killing your system if you try doing that. And so the idea is to try and get it to a point where you get most of the simulation done at a lower level. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to turn off the simulation here so I get my feedback back again. Okay, so that did fix the pocket somewhat. You can see I've still got a fair amount of bagginess in the front here. So that's being caused by the length of this guy and the length of that guy. So essentially, I've got it far too. Let me see if I can see how long this thing is. Go and select this stitch, 1288. And now I compare that to the pocket. which is 14. I think, screw it, I'm going to leave those wrinkles in there. He could probably also use with a little bit more room here for his package. But I think that'll be okay. Again, I'm going to manipulate this in ZBrush. Okay, so now that I've got the pattern kind of down to this level here, and I'm happy with this, what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm at 5 for my particle distance here. I'm going to drop this one more time to 3. We'll pull this out, and we'll see what this does. So again, I need to turn on the simulation here, and I've done a rotation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it catch up. It'll do the rotation afterwards. And so if I just, again, be a little patient with it here, let it do its recalculation. And again, it's retopoing the entire character. So I don't want to, rush it through its thing. Let it do what it's going to do. It'll get me down to a point where should we'll see how this works. Come on now, you can do it. Every time I click out of the software here, I get this this little white screen. Don't be scared when you see that. That doesn't mean the software's crashed. What that actually means is that the software stopped responding to Windows. Windows wants software to communicate with it every so now and then. And essentially what's happening is the software is concentrating on doing its job, and it just stopped talking to Windows. And so that's fine. I stopped talking to Windows too. When you see it go white like that, don't get all click happy and don't just assume that it's crashed. Give it patience, and it'll come back. Yeah, I hear you, Delta. I don't really know why people don't get it. All right, booyah. Let's come back. Still synchronizing. We're at 20%. Again, patience here is key. Just let it do its thing, and it will come back. Oh, come on, software. It'll be minimalistic. 3 to 5 isn't really that big of a jump. In fact, the software by default, if you try to enter anything lower than 5, it'll throw you a warning saying, like, don't be stupid. There's, you're going to an insanely small distance between your particles. But what I'm going to do next is what's really going to pick it up. So essentially, there are two modes that the software has for simulation. The first is a quick mode, which allows you to interact with the software or the fabric. So while you're simulating it, you can bunch it up in places and pull it around, much like I've been doing this whole time. The second mode of simulation is a far more complete simulation, and this just kills a processor. You think it takes a long time now doing anything. This is nothing compared to when you turn the simulation to a complete simulation. But what the complete simulation does is it just really pays attention to everything. So you're going to get the offset distance from the skin to be exact wherever it goes. It'll make sure that the fabric collides with the fabric in the right way, and you end up with the right kind of little details everywhere. It kind of just ups the quality of everything. And it does take a lot more time for it to do, but that's the only stuff I ever export from here. I wouldn't bother exporting anything with a normal simulation. It's just not worth it. And so, yeah, no, I hear you, Delta. Nothing like watching a stream that is literally just somebody loading something. But yeah, I'll get this out of here. There we go. Okay, so now I'm at 3. Again, I've rotated the character here. There we go. That's kind of how I can tell whether or not the software is caught up, is I do a rotation and then let the rotation catch up. And so, again, I'm going to run a little bit of a simulation here again, just trying to let things settle, only because there is a difference between 3 and 5. And so we'll let that difference kind of get applied. And then the very next thing I'm going to do is we'll turn on the complete simulation. And this will just kick things up a notch. It'll give us a much higher quality simulation. So yeah, Delta, if you enjoy the stream and you're curious why there aren't any more viewers, by all means, spread the word around. I'm always interested in getting more people around and making this worthwhile. I only started streaming just because I was in the studio doing the work anyway, and figured it would be beneficial to start streaming it for my students. But getting more people outside of my regular group watching would be fantastic. And so if you're liking it, share it with some other people, and that'll help get more people around, and we'll be able to start doing some more stuff. Yeah, I don't social media either, which is again part of the problem. I do have a LinkedIn account that I use, but that's about the end of it. Where are you from, Delta? You said English isn't your first language. I'm all ears. Nice. Yeah, I have thoughts of doing that. It just takes a lot of time to put together a tutorial. I'd started doing it at one point in time, and just getting the audio quality to the point that it's decent, and getting everything up to the point that it is something that you can start selling online. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. And part of the problem is that I'm always looking at new ways of doing things. And the last tutorial I put together, I ended up stopping midway through because I changed the way that I was working midway through the tutorial. And so it ended up kind of backfiring on me. I do have a tutorial out there. If you look me up on Gumroad, I've got some some videos that I place up, but like I said, they're kind of incomplete just because I altered the way that I was working midway through production, and so okay, my simulation at 3 is complete. I'm going to turn off the simulation. Now I want you to take note of the little gold arrow here, which indicates the simulation is on. When it turns gray, the simulation is off, meaning we're now able to get a little bit more real-time interaction with the fabric. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn up the quality of the simulation. And so what this is going to do again is give me a little bit of a boost in how things are being rendered. And so just kind of having a once-over look at everything here. Yeah, I'm just gonna want to double check for errors in places. I want to make sure that I'm not getting really big problems. His jacket might be a little tight in the arms, but again, I'm not overly concerned about that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn up the simulation. So I'm going to right-click and I'm going to go to the simulation properties, and in here, I'm going to go in my presets and I'm going to turn this up to complete. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to change a bunch of the settings here in the simulation, and I'm going to try and turn off a few things as well, just to make sure that we're getting a little bit more out of the performance here. And you'll notice that the little gold arrow is now replaced with a red one. This is kind of a warning signal. Make sure you're aware of what you're doing, because you are indeed now going to be doing a real-time simulation, or not real-time, but a more in-depth simulation on this with higher iterations and whatnot. And so what we'll do is we'll click that, and then I'm going to middle mouse button click and drag across the screen. Now what this is going to do is this is going to pan, but the camera won't catch up until the simulation has actually begun working. And so I'm going to use that as kind of an indicator to let me know that the simulation is indeed working, and that I can be ensured that this is doing what it's supposed to do. Okay. Come on, little computer. So again, the screen refresh is gone. Not the end of the world. It comes back. There we go. You moved. So you'll see him come back here in a second. There you go. Pops. Okay. So again, I'm just going to let this go a little bit. I want to make sure that it goes through a few iterations of this. And then I'm going to turn off the simulation. Okay, simulation is off, and I should now have a pretty complete simulation of this guy. Yeah, the little rubber bands on his wrist ended up looking pretty cool. But again, that's gonna end up getting covered by gloves, so I'm not really concerned about that. The belt loops too are kind of a placeholder. They're not meant to be the end result here of what I'm doing. The same is true with the belt itself. I'm gonna remake the belt another way. And so again, I just want to once over this thing, looking for errors. You can see there's a few places where I'm getting tiny little wrinkles. That one in his ankle there, I'm going to have to tweak that. So it looked like there was something funny going on up here too. I think it's okay. Okay. So now that I'm happy with this, let's get it out of here and bring it into ZBrush. Now there's a couple of settings that you can do. Let's go and do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is just export this as is. So I'm going to go export. I'm going to make sure I'm exporting selected. You'll notice I don't have his cuffs on the ankles selected. I don't want those. But I just got his main outfit here. And I'm going to overwrite the ones that I've already done here. So here's suit sim. I'm going to overwrite that. Now for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this is welded, because I'm going to bring this into ZBrush. And so I want it to weld everywhere where I've seamed everything together. Everything else should be okay. Now I'm going to do a second version. I'll do this to show you another really cool thing. So this one, I'll do simmed and unwelded. And let's actually reference the name of the object here. So this one I'm going to go to unweld and say OK. Like so. The other thing that I want is I want a flat version of this, and I'll show you what I do with that. That's right, yeah, they'll be absolutely separate pieces. So I'm going to click this button here, and what this is going to do is it's going to now, what this is going to do is it's going to reset this out to be a flattened version, which looks exactly like the UVs. And I'm going to export this one as well, and I'll just export this over the suit flat here. Now, it looks like it just completely undid that simulation, which, you know, could be a really stupid thing to do. But that's a really easy thing to fix. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Control-Z on my keyboard, and that'll snap it back to the simulated version of him. So there, just like that, I've got my simulation. Now I'm going to minimize Marvelous here, and let's go and take a look to see how well these things worked. So step number one, the ZBrush. Let's go into ZBrush and see just how well this thing did. I'm going to bring it into Max too, because I'll be able to correct the problems in Max a little bit faster than I will in ZBrush. Okay, so I can get rid of the light box, and we'll go and load. Not load. I want to import. This is the suit simmed. So this is the welded version here. So I'll just drag them on screen and have a look at what this has done. And yeah, not too bad. I just want to look at some of these areas here where things have gone a little bit sideways. I can see some weird topology just in the crest of his shoulder here. I'll go zoom in on this region here. You can see, we'll turn on the wireframes. You can see this. So yeah, so that's going to be an issue. The topology there is kind of bunk. There's also going to be an issue where more than one panel meet the same area. So things like these flaps on his back here, they're welded to two places, and so that's going to create a kind of issue as well. The nice thing about this, though, is that I'm going to go to my polygroups here, and I'm going to group this using UVs. Now, because the pattern that I use to make this outfit is my UVs, everything is completely separate. So by doing that, I can get polygroups now that match up with the original pattern that I had. So this gives me a really nice and easy way of being able to control what it is that I'm dealing with. And so those places where I ended up with a little bit of pinching here, it looks like his knee, where I saw that one little area there. That area too looks like there might be a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to have to correct that. Now, a lot of people at this point would go in and actually start well, a little bit of funkiness here too. Yeah, so some more issues there. Those are the things that I want to identify and fix in 3ds Max. You can see this one too, ended up with some weird gobbledygook in that area. Yeah, I'll have to fix that. Now, some people, and this is kind of where you'll find a lot of divergence in how people use the software, is what a lot of people do is they'll just use ZBrush here, and they'll go and they'll Z-remesh this, keeping the polygroups on. And what that'll do is it'll give you much better topology, or at least ZBrush topology. And it'll keep the all these groups here intact, and then you could go and re-unwrap again using those groups. But my UVs are perfect, and they're perfect because they were generated from a sewing pattern. And so I don't actually want to destroy my UVs. If I can, I'd like to keep the UVs and just get better looking topology on everything that I'm doing. So I can see here too, the knee, something went sideways with that knee too. So I'm going to bring this into Max here, and we'll go see what I can do in Max about cleaning this up and getting to a point. I'm going to close Photoshop here to try and save a little performance. This guy's been saved, so I'm just going to close him now, as my exports seem to have worked. Okay, so here's now the pattern in 3ds Max. And there's going to be a few issues here under the armpits, just because the angle that his arms are on, there's going to be some pulling and stretching deep in the armpit here, where you can see there's just a pile of mess. But what I'm really interested in is cleaning the areas here where I did see stuff got a little out of control. So I've got an area here where they just wasn't able to match the topology quite as nicely as it could have. And so I'm just hitting delete here. And there actually is a group of vertices here, and not just a single vertice. And I'll just remove the edge in the middle here to try and keep things quadded. Again, the topology is not fantastic here. But again, I'm going to sculpt over this, and so that's one area where things went a little sideways. If I go and look at his knee here. So here too, this was another area where things just didn't behave the way they should have. And so I'll go and delete here. And again, I'll get rid of the triangulated edge so that I end up with quadded geometry there as well. The front of the knee, yeah, here too. So something went a little bit kind of goofy here. So here it looks like what happened is that it actually folded in on itself. This is an area where the seams weren't actually done as nicely as they could have been. And so I'm actually going to delete those and cap this. And if I just connect in between, I'll collapse these two as well. Get rid of that edge. Now, I've got to be very careful when I do this because it's very easy to screw up the UVs, which is the entire point of doing things this way, is to end up with those really beautiful UVs. Okay, so this is, again, we're an area here where things went a little goofy. So we'll see. That's unfortunate, so I'm going to have to split these. So I've got a collection of vertices here, and I'm going to break them. And again, I'll go and grab these ones here and move them up. They're going to be up here somewhere. I'm going to have to go in and take a look at the UVs and try and see if everything looks the way it's supposed to. Essentially, I kind of know where each of these areas is that I'm manipulating. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at those areas in the UVs and see if they are screwed up there in any way. Yeah, it's not a real easy thing to do. I'll show you the other technique that I have for doing things too, and this is the technique that I'm doing now is for just resculpting in ZBrush. This is getting really, really high-end topology here like this, and then going in and manipulating it and getting to the point where it does look really good. This polygon here, this guy's got to go. Oops. There we go. So that kind of cleaned up that a little bit. I mean, I'm trying not to delete things if I can. Although in some situations, like these two polygons, ain't nothing I can do. They don't belong here. This one too. Okay, those guys are going to be fine. I just need to remove this edge. And since I can't remove that edge, it tells me there's more than one vertex here. Okay, lastly, just the top of the pocket here. Yeah, that's kind of an unfortunate polygon. I'm going to delete those two polygons. Bridge across here. Now, the issue that I've got is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces here that are meant to, and I can't even use the border here because it'll essentially highlight everything, which is of no use to me. But yeah, that's going to be another place that is just going to be all full of problems. I do have a triangle here. I wonder if I can actually bring another quad down here to help this. But anyway, let me show you the other technique for doing clothing that I've done as well. I'm just going to hide this suit for now. And what I'll do is I'm just going to go import, and let's bring in the other ones. So here's the unwelded version of the suit. So this one should, for all intents and purposes, look identical to the one we just had. Now it's bringing in colors here from what existed in the software. You can even see where some of the funny little seams here are. I'm just going to make sure this is indeed unwelded, which it appears to be. Now, the reason you want to use unwelded has nothing to do with this outfit. It actually has a little bit more to do with the flattened version. So here's the flattened version. And I'll show you something that not a lot of people really pick up on. So here's the flattened version of the same outfit. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all the vertices from this thing, make sure all they're aligned in Y, and I'm going to put them at 0 in Y, just so that they're at the origin, like so. And then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick the simulated suit. I'm going to put a modifier on here called Morpher. And in the morpher, I'll just pick the unsimulated one, the flattened one. And now what I've got, and this is the really cool thing, is I've got a slider that lets me go from one to the other. Something like that. Now the reason that I like doing that is that A, Max is still showing me lighting information from the simulated suit, which allows me to see where a lot of these details and these wrinkles are going to end up, as well as little issues. So right there is a little bit of a geometric issue. But what this allows me to do is something really, really cool. Watch this. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a plane. And I'll just look at the neck here as a example. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put this thing in X-ray mode and turn on its wireframe so we can see it. I'll convert it to an editable poly as well, like so. And then what I'm going to do is just go and get this thing as close as I can. To the actual geometry. Okay, last edge. So we'll go and do this. Okay, so now I've got a plane here that is matching in size and shape to the simulated one underneath. It's currently flattened out. So watch this. I'm going to grab these edges and let's go to connect. Now this is the entire collar. It goes around his neck. So I'm going to say that this should maybe be 32 segments around. So I'll add 31 edges and say OK. And then I'll go through the collar this way. And we're not going to do, obviously, 32 this way. But I'll get this to be to the point that the polygons are pretty square. Okay, so something like that, and I'll hit OK. Now this is kind of the idea, is that you would go through and match each one of these panels up, all the way through the outfit until you've got a nice, beautiful, clean topology. Now the reason I do things this way instead of retopologizing in ZBrush is that what you're looking at while being a flattened version of this outfit is the UVs. That's exactly right. So what you do is you just planar map your new low poly exactly like this. Planar map it will give you perfect UVs like they exist. And now, watch this. This is the magic part. I'm going to put another modifier on here. We're going to use skin wrap. And with skin wrap, I'm going to go add the costume as the mesh that's deforming this thing. Now, if I go and grab the mesh, we'll turn this off here so you can see this, and I reset it, my new low poly is right where it's supposed to be. It's a beautiful thing. So there's my low poly. There it is by itself. And there's the wireframe for the low poly. It matches 100%. This gives you an incredibly fast, easy way of retopologizing, making your low poly. And so usually what I do is this. And so let's go. I'm going to put this guy back to 100%. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to frame 50, and we'll turn on auto key here, and I'll bring this up to 100% there. And then I'll turn off the auto key, and then I'll grab my low poly guy here as well, and we'll delete that skin wrap because we're not done with that. And I'll go and make his belt. Actually, I don't need to do the belt because it's going to be made separately. But what I can do is I can actually go in and start doing like panel to panel to panel now and go through each one of these things. So here what I'll do is I'll just grab one of my random square polygons and holding shift, copy it down here. And I'll just grab this vertex. Make sure I'm in the front view here as I'm doing this so that these line up exactly. And I'll just go and place this right there. I can even turn on snaps if I want to and snap each one of these. I'll bring this one down here. And put this over here. Okay, we'll bring these down. Do somewhere about here. Okay, something like that. I'll use Swift Loop here, and I'll add another vertex here. I'm going to move this one before I add any more, and the reason for that is that Swift Loop, now if you hold Shift, will actually help grab that curvature a little bit better. Okay, so something like that. Again, I want to try and make these polygons match in size, so I'm going to go and Swift Loop them one more time. Okay, and those will be about the same size. Something like that. Okay, now I'll take this one, and I'm just going to hold Shift and drag it over here, because I want this to loop around his arm here. Okay, another Swift Loop, and I'll drag this out. So you can see that this is a pretty fast way of retoppling, and it's fast because I'm retoppling something that's flat. Instead of worrying about X, Y, Z position of every vertex, I'm only worrying about X, Y position. Everything in Z is flat, or in this case, Y is flat. And then I just use that skin morph, and I morph them from one to the other. So what I'm going to do now is bring these all the way down. So let's do this edge minus this, and this minus this. And then holding Shift, I'll bring these down to the bottom. I'm going to reset the X form on this thing really quick, just so I can align this in Z. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll just move the edge vertices out to where they belong. That's exactly it. The morpher will just morph it back correctly. So I'll just auto adjust these, and then I'll dynamesh through the middle here. And again, I'm just worrying about the outer edge. I don't care about anything else in the middle. Click, 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 click. And I think I'm going to add two more here. Two more. Okay. Now, obviously, I've got a big issue here with the spacing, but it's not actually an issue because I can use the spacing tool to actually auto-align these things. This whole loop too. Make sure that's spaced out. That's good. So now I just grab the entire thing, go to vertices, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the relax tool, and we'll just crank up the amount and crank up the iterations, and booyah, perfect topology. So vertices, relax, crank up the amount, crank up the iterations, and it's absolutely perfect topology. So really easy. Now again, if we want to double check to see how this is going, and you don't have to do this all the time, but it's kind of a neat thing to do. If I go and put that skin wrap modifier on, and again pick the other version of the clothing here, I can then go in, morph this thing back, and you can see that that is actually making my low poly. So I'll just add the high poly. Okay, we use the slider to go back to 0, and look at the low poly. I don't know. I don't blender. And so, to my knowledge, all of the tools that exist in Max and exist in Maya or Blender, they're all exactly the same. It's just a matter of finding out how these tools work in those software packages. I know Max inside and out, and so I can obviously do things a lot better in Max. Yeah, there is a student version. If you are a student, there is a student version of Max that is free. You just need to send them your student ID. You go to student.autodesk.com. They've got the student versions of the software there. You'll notice that I too, oh, you can't see it because of my overlay, but I too am using the student version here. As I'm an instructor, I don't bother buying this software anyway, and so I just use the student version for the teaching stuff that I do, as well as my own personal work. When it comes to doing professional work, that is another question. And generally what I will do in that situation is I don't Max, I just ZBrush. And so I've got another little bit of a workflow that I use there. I don't think anybody has the money for 3ds Max. It's a ludicrous amount of money to spend on software. Yeah, that is the idea. And I mean, like when you go work at a studio, the studios all have the licenses to the software. Going indie is a different thing. You know, you obviously need to have the software if you're an indie developer, but you know, there are alternatives. Blender is a good alternative. It is free. You just have to be able to find the tools and use the tools in Blender in the same way that they exist in Max. So here I've gone in, and this is another thing you're really going to watch out for when you do this. So here I've done the entire top crest of the shoulder, and I want to make sure that these are evenly distributed, that these are all about the same distance. Now that gives me 8 polygons from neckline to shoulder. The reason that's important is that that piece gets sewn to this piece, and so I'm going to need to make sure, if I grab one of these things, I need to make sure that over here, this guy is also going to be 8 polygons across so that I can weld them together come the end. And so you do need to think a little bit about how you're doing this. But if I stretch this guy out here, I'll bring this one out too. Okay, so now I'll add that. Now we got 2, 4, and there's 8. So again, I'm going to go and just move these in a little bit here. Try and keep them on that edge because it is nice and straight. I'll bring this in as well. So again, I'll go select all these vertices and hit the relax tool again here. I'll go and make sure my edges are evenly distributed as well. I've got that on a shortcut because I use it all the time. That guy looks good. Let's use a skin wrap on here again and double check that this is still going to be working here. So now I've got 8 on here as well as 8 on here. So if I go in, simulate this guy back. Oh, and of course, I did the wrong one. Okay, so we'll go back to frame 50. Not a big deal. Again, I go to my front view. I'll delete the skin wrap. You have to delete the skin wrap. It doesn't update properly. But here's another really awesome thing too, because these panels are all symmetrical. I'm just going to rotate this 180. And now I can go place it over this panel and flip it inside out. And again, if I go in skin wrap, you know what? I'm going to make a shortcut to skin wrap on my toolbar here. Customize user interface. I use skin wrap all the time, and this is my own little custom toolbar here. So I'm going to go put it on here. So skin, and there it is there. So I'm just going to go drag this in here. Come here, you. Oh, I got to be doing this in toolbars. That's why. There we go. Now what I'll do is, whoops, delete that. I'm going to put a button on here. Go find something that looks like skin wrapping. There. That one looks like it'll work. There we go. So now I got a skin wrap button. That'll speed me up a little bit. Okay, so now I can go back here to the beginning, and you'll notice that within reason, we are pretty close to those things lining up. Now, if we look at the what's going on with the neck here, we've got a different story, and that things are not exactly lining up. That's okay. I've still got another trick up my sleeve for doing the neck. There's another list of things I'm going to be doing there. But yeah, it is absolutely close enough that you can start welding things together. And so we'll bring this back to frame 50. We'll delete the skin wrap. We'll go back to the front view again. I'll turn off the grid here. And continue along my merry journey. And so I'll grab these edges here. About that one. And I'll bring them all the way down. Actually, I'm not going to bring them all the way down. This is a giant triangular shape here. And so there's a few things that I know I'm going to do here. Let's actually delete these. The first thing is I need to make the neckline. And so I'll just go line this up nice and straight here. Something like that. Use the X. Okay, so we'll get this nice and straight. Yeah, it's something that, again, like I said, I'm always looking for the faster, easier ways of doing things. And so this is one of those things that I've just constantly been playing with this, trying to find a better, easier way of doing things. And this has been my easiest and pain-freest way of working that I've been able to uncover so far. And so, yep, this is all me. Again, I'll just get this guy lined up. Get these kind of closer to the edge here. Yeah, that's kind of the whole point, right? Is to get to enough of these tricks down that you're able to, work faster. Okay, we'll go and bridge this. And I'll just go and line this up a little bit here. And I want to put one in the middle. So again, they're kind of mismatched here, so I'll use Max as spacer to redistribute those edges so it's really nice and clean. Again, I need to put another 3 of these things across here. And so again, I'll go and line this one up. And so I'll just put 2 edges in here. That makes 4 across, and then we'll just evenly distribute them. And now we've got that one done. Now I need to reduce this down as I go. And so here what I'll do is I'll switch over to the extend mode because this will go a little bit faster this way. And so we'll do another row like that. I think maybe one more row. Like that. And then I'll bring this guy down and go across this way. And again, I don't really care about how sloppy the topology is. As long as I'm doing it symmetrically, it doesn't really matter. Now, there is a line here, and this is one of the reasons why I like using the this morpher trick with the simulated onto the non-simulated, is that you can actually see where you're going to end up with problems. This line is actually where this jacket is flipped open. And so it would probably make sense to actually have an edge follow that. But in this case, I don't think I really even want to do that. I can, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I don't really think I want to do that too much. So what I'm going to do is just leave it like that. I'm going to bring this down to about here. And again, I'll just go and line these things up. So now what I need to do, I need to start reducing this down. There are too many polygons here to bring all the way down to the bottom of this thing. So what I'll do is I'll start reducing down from the center by doing this little pattern here. So this takes 4 polygons and reduces it down to 2. So when I go and bring this down now, you can see that we'll end up with 2 polygons instead of the 4. So that'll work out quite nicely. And I'm going to have to do that a couple more times. So I'll actually get rid of these ones that I just did. And I'll do this pattern again here since I do have another 4 and another 4. So again, I'll just bring up the 2 middle ones, and I'll bridge this one, bridge this one, and bridge here. So same thing here, 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 and here, and here, and there. And so what that's done is that's gone from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is a beautiful thing. So here, I'll bring this whole thing down again to about here. And again, line it up a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same reduction trick here again. So I'll bring this one up. And build this pattern again. And that'll give me now 4 polygons. Yeah, that's the whole point, my friend. Time is money. And if you're not fast, you're left behind. So I try to do this stuff as fast and as quickly as I can. Put a few more edges in here. Whoops. Not that one, that one. I think I'm going to need to put a couple more here too. Oops. Okay, let's see how that works out. So first, okay, a little bit of a redistribution that way. The bottoms should be already nice. And then we'll just go and relax this again. Let's see what kind of shape we're getting. Now again, I can see exactly how many polygons need to be here because I do have the matching panel. So this panel all the way down the side is 20, and I know I'm way over on this side. This one is 26. So I can do one of two things. I can either reduce this one or increase this one. I think what I'll do is increase this one. This one is 20, so there's 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then again, I relax them, and these things should now meet. Now the issue here is that these are not spaced correctly, and to do this, I actually have to remove an edge, technically breaking something. But what that's going to do is it's going to redistribute those edges a little bit in a way that will make them match up. So essentially, if you have a vertex with more than 4 edges on it, the spacing doesn't work. And so now if we go look at this, you should see spacing that works really, really nicely. Again, we can go throw the skin wrap on here and double check that this is actually working. So this should be the front panel of the shirt here. And if we take a look at this now, you can see that that is really beautifully matched up all the way down that side. And again, he's got a fair amount of topology in his shirt here, which will should lead to really nice deformations in his chest. It's probably higher than it needs to be, but I think it's okay. I'm going to be going for somewhere in the neighborhood of 120, 130,000 polys on this guy. And so that should work out quite nicely. So again, I'll go back here and delete my morpher, or my skin wrap. And I'll continue along. Now actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to delete the, bring the skin morpher back. And the reason for this is I want to look at the back of his shirt here and count how many polygons I actually need here. So it looks like I actually need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this panel. And then this one's going to be 2. And then they're going to go inside a little bit too. So I think there's an overlap here of, I don't know, looks like 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 6 and 3. Okay. So now with those numbers in place, I know that this is going to be 6, and that should be fairly easy to reproduce this. I'm aiming for 120 to 130,000 in that range. So something akin to the new Tomb Raider or Uncharted, the same kind of poly count you get in Hellblade. I think she's about 130,000 or somewhere in that range. And so, yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. It's going to be overkill. I'm probably going to make LODs of this guy because he is going to end up just sitting inside a car for most of the game. Okay, I don't want to say game. I'm not actually making a game. But he's going to end up sitting in a car for most of the time, so I'm going to bring that down. No, that's not nearly as much as you'd think for a game character, especially if you're using Unreal. There are a lot of factors that go into it. You know, what else you have going on screen and whatnot, but a lot of the higher end games are now running, you know, a little over 100,000 on their characters. Polygon count isn't really the bottleneck it once was. Yeah, I think that might have been on my end. I'm not sure what's going on. It's working now, though. But yeah, no, polygon counts haven't really been the bottleneck for a little while, and so you can get some higher polygon counts in characters than you once had. So again, just kind of going through here, I'm going to put 4 in here, and then 6 in here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I need to again evenly distribute these things again. Cool. Yeah, draw calls are what's really, really, really important. And so you get, you know, as long as you're smart with how you build things, draw calls are a fairly easy thing to keep low. And even in, you know, newer engines like Unreal 4, you don't even get multiple draw calls for breaks in your geometry anymore, which is something you used to get. And so that gives you a little bit of running room, a little bit of room to get away with things again. Okay, so now I'm going to go look at the arm area here. Cool. So let's see here, 19 edges. Oh yeah, that would do it. So again, the more accurate you can be in doing this, the less work you're going to have once you do the skin wrap and you actually set it up to work correctly. There's always going to be a little bit of work that needs doing there, but the idea is to get this damn near as close as you can. And what you'll end up with is a real easy time both sculpting in ZBrush as well as having nice perfect UVs. So if you hadn't caught it, essentially what this means is that I'm going to be working on subdivisions of my low poly in ZBrush instead of having a separate high poly that I'm working on. I'm just going to work directly on this model. So I'm setting up much better topology. And then when I get into ZBrush, it'll be a lot easier to just subdivide this guy and get to a point where that thing's going to read correctly. So the other thing that I'm doing here is I keep bouncing around. You can see that I did like the top edge of this thing, and then I kind of jumped away and I went down to this side. And that's because I'm trying to figure out how many polygons to put down the side, and I don't really know how many I'm going to do there. So I copied the armpit over to this area. And then I'll finish this panel, and then I'll bring, those polygons across here to do that one. And so it's kind of a little bit of bouncing around, but in the end, it should make it so that most of these things line up quite nicely. This looks like it could use another relax. There we go. I thought that thing was a little funny looking. All right. So I did a single row of this. What I'll do here, let's see how many polygons I did here. That's 12. If I do another 12 there, that's 24. And that's 25, 26, 27, 28. That'll be 28 around for the sleeve. I think that'll work. Thanks, Em. Long time no see, kiddo. How you doing? Okay, a little bit more refining. I'm going to go up and, again, just do some edge relaxing here and readjustments. Even though it's not going to do a really good job, I am going to do the relaxing here. Again, just to kind of help me get this center area settled a little bit more. It gives me a much better idea as to the end result here that I'm going to end up with. Okay, I'll switch back to my extend mode. This is going to be the fastest way of doing this. I'll bring these guys up, and then bring these guys down. Okay, and 2 more polygons down here. And again, I'll do a little bit of the morph trick again, just to try and get to a point here where I can see how this is lining up with the other mesh. I don't even know if I have the right number of vertices going through here, and so I'll need to adjust that. Cool. Welcome back, Delta. All right. Do another quick skin wrap here, and we'll see how this is coming. So again, would have made a little bit more sense to do it on the other side, but whatever. So this one needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think 5 is what I need. Okay. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Which means I need 1 more in here. Which makes sense. This is 3 across. And this is the same width, 3 across. All right. We'll go and continue this up here. I'll use my extend mode, because this will probably work the fastest. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, relaxing time. So again, I'll go and adjust each of my boundary edges to make sure that they are indeed all evenly distributed. And I'll switch over to vertices and relax, and I get a really nice deformation of this. Before I do anything, we'll copy them over to the other side. You can see this guy's in a little bit of a different position here. I try to keep this lined up and marvelous just for the sake of being able to do this, but it should still work nicely. Let's make sure everything is the right way. Let's do a reset. And again, we'll double check to see how this is all lining up here. Yeah, not too bad. You can see again in that neckline, things are a little bit off, but that's not the end of the world. It's a fairly easy thing to do. All right, back up here. So now, the nice thing about this is that I know how many edges I need to run down this length, that number being 14. Yep, something like this. So again, I'll just get these guys into the right position here. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, and now we'll just even them out. And those should all line up. I'll just relax this here. There we go. And then I can bring these down to the bottom. To do this, I'll check and see how many more edges down I need to go. It's going to be 13 edges down. 13 edges. That seems like overkill, but whatever. It is what it is. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now here, I don't want to do anything above there. So that these line up properly with those ones. I also need, these are all going to have to be way thinner, because what I've missed is that third row of vertices. I'm going to have to move those. Okay, we'll wait. I'll do that in a moment. So what I'll do here, I might be able to even symmetry this guy. Okay, so I'm going to extend mode. I'll bring 1 down, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So again, I'll just put these guys on the outer edge. Okay, bring these guys up. And bridge all the way across. I'll do a quicker bridge here. I'll line these up in Z. Okay, this should fix everything up. Again, I'm going to go have a look at this, just to make sure it's actually doing what I want it to do. It's not too bad. You can see it's not entirely adhering to the shape of the wrinkles here in his back, but I think it's going to be close enough. And the overlap looks pretty good. Again, it doesn't seem to line up quite nearly as much as I'd hoped. But it is what it is. Yeah, they are pretty deep. And again, I'm going to rely on the normal map for a good chunk of that. What I'm actually concerned about is turned edges. And so I'm going to have to make sure I'm going to end up having to triangulate in any of those really deep areas. Just to make sure that I end up with the topology going the right way so that it doesn't get mixed up when it goes from Max to Maya. You know, if I was to give this to an animator. Okay, I'm pleased with that. I'm going to go make the other side of his jacket here in the front. So I'll start off by going and flipping that and moving it over here. And again, getting my positions as correct as I can. Now, a lot of times when I do this, I'll try and put a color on my geometry, not so much the finished product in terms of coloring, but something that allows me to see, like you can see that the gray that I've got on here and the gray of my viewport, like they're almost identical, and it makes it really hard to tell one from the other. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just put something like a bright fluorescent orange or something on there, so that you can very much tell the difference between them, and that'll give me a little bit of an easier time in differentiating between the two. Yeah, I like pink. Who doesn't like pink? Alright, I'll go move these. Again, I'm going to use my evenly spaced edges tool here momentarily to align these. Because I'm moving them all around, it's kind of skewing where they are a little bit. And so in order to get them to line up, there we go. Okay, so this should be another 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to see things, right? So bring these guys up. And then the same deal here. Move these over. And then what I can do is, again, I'll do another relax, shift everything around. Okay, almost there. Okay, so here we'll just align these in Z. Down a little bit. And now we should be good to, again, align. And relax. And it's a beautiful thing. Yep, it's working out quite nicely. Okay, 16 across the center of the back. So that's a fairly easy thing since there are 2 panels along the center of the back. That'll give me 8. So we'll go and set up our corners first. Now these rectangular pieces are often the easiest and fastest to reproduce topologically, so much so that I often catch myself trying to use them in my clothing designs more often than I should, only because of how much it speeds me up to retopo them. And so it is one of those things that, you need to make sure the design is doing what it's supposed to do, and that you don't let your skill drive design. As soon as you do that, you're going to fall into a rut, and you're going to end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. All right, move this guy over here, which is pretty good. I can also grab the absolute bottom row of that and use it to create the starting of the pants. Since they match in numbers, it becomes quite easy to just move one over to the other. Again, modeling in 2 axes like this is just an incredibly easy thing to do. Now again, I'm going to make a lower resolution version of this guy. The vehicle that he's going to be driving, I'm looking at making that a couple 100,000 polys in the engine. 250, I think, is where I settled. And so I'm going to make a lower res version of this guy for when he's in the car. But I do want to make it so that he can get out of the car and run around and use his ability. And so I am going to have to make a full-blown version of this guy. And it is insanely easy to go from one to the other as long as you start with the high. Going low and trying to add more detail is just brutal. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but to, retopo a kind of mid-level or mid-poly level guy and then retopo a high poly guy, like it's kind of the same workflow, and we'll end up yielding really nice results. And I can just continuously bake them down. And so again, I try to stick to the perimeter when starting this stuff out, only because it's a much easier way of figuring out what I'm doing. Making sure all these polygons are the same size. It's just easier to do this way. Yeah, I'll do it manually, but it's not anywhere near as time-consuming as you might think. Essentially, I'll just retopo directly over the mesh that I have. I didn't want that one. Yeah, I'll just retopo over top of them once I've got all my, even after all my textures and everything are done. It's a stupid simple thing to do. So the nice thing here is that, again, this is the first panel in his pants, and so you can remove stuff, but it's never going to work out. And when you remove things, you have to be aware of UV seams. So, for instance, with an outfit that's going to be made like this, again, you have to remember that what we're looking at essentially is UVs. I can't move any border piece because it'll screw up the textures. That makes it a little bit more complex to remove things. And, you can do that, but you won't end up with a really nice topology, and you won't end up with something that reads really well. It's okay. Again, nothing automated is going to be as good as old-fashioned work. If you can do it yourself, that'll always give you better results. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeesh. I'm just trying to get the same amount of polygons in here. Okay, that's nice and clean. All right. I'll just go and close up the hole here. And again, the nice thing about this is I don't care what the topology looks like. Yeah, usually most of the time. Again, this is not my first rodeo, and so it does make it a little bit easier. Again, once you kind of follow the outside, it makes it a little bit easier too. You just kind of keep that going, and so I kind of know mostly where it's going to go. The other thing too is that I am not paying any kind of attention to what the topology looks like in the middle. No, that was wrong. So here I've got myself into a little bit of a corner where I've got not quite the right number of edges here. So I'm going to start adjusting things. And see where I end up. That's right. I use relax and everything's sunshine and rainbows. And so this is giving me the kind of topology I'm looking for here. I just ended up with a weird number here. So what I'm going to do is just go and delete a bunch of this stuff. Let's go and relax this guy too. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2, and 1. Which is the problem? So maybe we can do that. 1, 2, 3, and that. Okay. We'll bridge those. Okay, that works out. And so, yeah, relax is your friend here, right? It gives you a damn near perfect topology. As long as you kind of pay attention to where you want your loops to go and what you want them to do. In fact, even here, I probably could have run another loop going around the crotch, but not the end of the world. Now, go see what we're doing here. You know what? If it doesn't have them, you can always go and write them yourself, Create yourself a script, create the tool. If it doesn't exist, make it exist. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Okay, I'll give this a whirl. You gotta love symmetrical patterns. All right, I'll do another test here. I test all the time because there's nothing worse than doing a bunch of work and then realizing after that nothing lines up and nothing fits. And so I am constantly going through and making sure that it is actually doing, the type of thing that I want it to do. Okay, so here we've come into an issue in which either I don't know how to count or I just counted the wrong area. I believe I counted the wrong area. I need to add 2 more edge loops, as if you look at the joint here between the red, there's going to be a couple of additional ones. And so something went a little off the rails. And so I believe what I should have been counting was the 16 with these 2, which makes 20. And what I did instead was 8 and 8, which is 16. So I think I'm 4 off. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, to double check that that's right, I'm going to readjust. Relax, and then try it again. This is why I am constantly doing the checks to make sure that it does work, because one little sip up like that, and you're doing an entire retopo again. No, I'm off still. So that's unfortunate because I can't tell what it is that I'm looking at. So what I'm going to do here is do this slowly. And indeed, what I should be counting should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 20. And so let's have another look at this. So that's 20, 12, 12. So no, I didn't count again. Let's try that now. There we go. Counting for the win. Okay. We'll do this test again. It is about high time I save this file too. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, that's nice. So they don't, again, they're not exactly lined up, mainly because the spacing between the two panels is a little bit different. But at least I know I'm on the right track now. Okay, so that means that this is 10, and that this 2 should be 10. So that's easy. I know where I want to put my loops. Those are the two places I messed up earlier. And those are going to go there. All right, it's a beautiful day. Well, it's 5:30 here. I think I'm going to give it a break for now. I'll go and save my file here so that I can pick this up again. But it's high time I go have some dinner and visit with my family a little bit. And so thanks for watching. And I hope to see you next time.